Hello, in this discussion we'll be finding the exact values of trig functions of any angle given information about the functions. Alright, so here's an example. We're going to find the exact values of the trig functions given that the sine of theta is negative 1/2 and theta is between pi and 3 pi over 2. That's a fancy way of saying theta is in the third quadrant. So if you're between pi and 3 pi over 2, that means you're in the third quadrant. So the values of the trig functions will be associated with that. So if you're in the third quadrant, only the tangent and the cotangent will be positive. All the remaining 4 trig functions will be negative. That's why sine of theta was negative 1/2 in this example, because theta is in the third quadrant. So what we want to do is find the exact values of the remaining trig functions. Now, I've used the right triangle here. I could have also used one of the fundamental identities to figure out the remaining ones. I think it's easier just by creating the triangle itself. I realize you're saying, well, sine of theta is negative 1/2. Well, it's negative because of which quadrant it's in. But the ratio is the ratio. The ratio is 1/2, albeit that it's negative. But so sine of theta is opposite over hypotenuse. So the opposite side is 1 and the hypotenuse is 2. Okay? Yeah, where do I put the negative at? The negative doesn't refer, because that's just, the theta is going to be my reference angle anyway here. So all I got to do is figure out what the ratios are and make sure that only the tangent and the cotangent are positive, and make sure everything else is negative. So there is a third side here that I need to figure out. And that by the Pythagorean theorem, that third side is root 3. Okay? So now I can find all the ratios. Sine of theta is 1/2. Cosine of theta is the square root of 3 over 2. The tangent of theta is 1 over root 3, just by SOHCAHTOA, just like I normally would do. And just make sure when I go down through the list that the sine is negative, the cosine is negative, the tangent is positive. So the cosine of theta is root 3 over 2, but it's negative. Why is it negative? Because we're in the third quadrant. The tangent of theta is 1 over root 3. Okay? So I know you can rationalize that as well. It's root 3 over 3. You can take the square root of 3 on top and bottom, and that's root 3 over 3. I don't believe I did it here. But, and then the rest of them just kind of comes off of this one. Then you do the secant of theta. It's going to be negative 2 over root 3, the reciprocal. The cotangent of theta is going to be the square root of 3 over 1, or simply square root of 3. And then the only one left is cosecant. And the cosecant of theta is going to be the reciprocal of sine of theta. And so it would be negative 2 over 1. And I didn't list those down because I want you to find the rest. I just told you what they are, though. So they'll find the rest of them. And so that's kind of where it works. But I want to draw your attention, because a lot of people, when they see how I do this, they don't see why there's not a negative somewhere in my triangle. Remember, sides have a length that are positive. They cannot be negative. So I treat this as two different things. I treat the ratio separate from whether it's plus or minus. The plus or minus just tells me whether it's which quadrant you're in. And so since they're telling me theta is between pi and 3 pi over 2, that is all I need to figure out the answers, whether they're plus or minus. Okay? But the ratios themselves are going to help me create the triangle. In this case, the opposite of 1, the hypotenuse is 2. And by the Pythagorean theorem, that gives me the adjacent side. And then I just use SOHCAHTOA to figure out all the other ratios. And then remembering that I'm in the third quadrant, so therefore tangent and cotangent should be the ones that are positive. Pretty simple. Okay? If you have any questions on this one, you feel free to let me know, because this one does cause a little grief for some people. Now, I want to do one more example. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to show you what you could see. It's very similar to this example. So if you say find the exact values of the trig function, it's not exactly the same. Okay? It says the tangent of theta equals 3 and the sine of theta is less than 0. Find the exact, so it's the same thing. Find the exact values of the rest of the trig functions. So the good news is I can find cotangent really easy, right? Because tangent of theta is 3. So cotangent of theta is 1/3. So that's one of the next 5 right there. Now, what would you do? Well, I don't know which quadrant it is. I don't know if they're pluses or minuses. You kind of do. Because they're telling me that tangent of theta is positive 3. So I know right away I'm either in the first quadrant or in the third quadrant because tangent of theta is 3, and that's positive. So right away, I'm either in the first or third quadrants. Okay? So of the first and third quadrants, where is sine of theta negative? Yep, it's the third quadrant. So just like the previous example, they just gave the previous example, they just told me flat out theta is between pi and 3 pi over 2, which means it's in the third quadrant. This was a roundabout way of saying the same thing. So on this one, you would use your little right triangle again, just like I did on the previous example. You do the opposite over the adjacent for the tangent. So regard to theta, the opposite side will be 3, and the adjacent side will be 1. And then how do you find the hypotenuse? Yep, Pythagorean theorem, which I believe is the square root of 10. Okay, once you got those, then you find the remaining ones, and remembering again that you're in the third quadrant. But you know, I think I'm going to leave this one for you. Okay, and I gave you the hint here. Draw a triangle involving the tangent ratio and the sines of both trig functions to find the sines of the remaining trig functions, which we did. We found out we were in the third quadrant, so only the tangent and the cotangent are positive in this quadrant. So if you have any questions regarding this video, this discussion, feel free to contact me, and you have a good day.